the company announcement, my brother Marcus sneered, "Don't embarrass me by trying to network, and don't mention we're related." That's when I walked to the podium as the new CEO and owner. The moment had arrived exactly as I'd planned for 2 years, standing in that gleaming boardroom at Morgan Technologies, watching Marcus's face drain of color as CEO Miranda Walsh introduced me as the company's new owner. I felt a satisfaction deeper than any revenge fantasy could provide. This wasn't luck or coincidence. This was strategic precision executed flawlessly. Let me back up to explain how we reached this point. The sheer audacity of Marcus's dismissal that day was built on decades of systematic underestimation that finally backfired spectacularly. My name is Dr. Rachel Mitchell, and I'm a 34-year-old business strategist with an MBA from Wharton and a PhD in corporate finance. For the past 8 years, I've been running Mitchell Strategic Consulting, a firm specializing in helping technology companies optimize operations and identify acquisition targets. What my family didn't know was that my little consulting business generates $850,000 annually and has positioned me as one of the most connected deal makers in the tech industry. Marcus, meanwhile, built his career at Morgan Technologies through charm, networking, and taking credit for other people's work. As the company's director of business development, he pulled in $180,000 yearly, while constantly bragging about his corporate success. Our parents, Robert and Linda Mitchell, treated him like the family's golden child, while dismissing my achievements as academic nonsense that doesn't translate to real business. The dynamic became crystal clear at family gatherings. Marcus would hold court, describing his latest deals and corporate victories while everyone hung on his words. When conversations turned to my work, the interest evaporated immediately. "Rachel's got her little consulting thing," Mother would say with a patronizing smile. Very nice for someone who prefers the safety of academia to real business challenges. What they didn't understand was that my little consulting thing had given me insider access to every major technology merger and acquisition in the region over the past 5 years. I'd personally advised on deals worth over $2 billion, building relationships with private equity firms, investment banks, and corporate executives across the industry. While Marcus was impressing clients at expensive dinners, I was structuring leveraged buyouts and hostile takeovers. The turning point came 18 months ago during a particularly humiliating family dinner. Marcus had just been promoted to senior director and was celebrating with our parents at their country club. I'd driven over after finishing a consultation with Blackstone Capital about a potential Morgan Technologies acquisition they were considering. "Rachel's finally making decent money with her consulting," Mother announced to the table, as if I weren't sitting right there. Though nothing like Marcus, of course. Real corporate success requires a different kind of talent. Marcus leaned back in his chair, swirling his wine smugly. "The thing about consulting is that you're always on the outside looking in. You can theorize about business strategy, but you never have real responsibility for outcomes. It's safe work for people who can't handle the pressure of actual leadership." Dad nodded approvingly. "Marcus has real skin in the game. He's building something significant at Morgan Technologies. Rachel's work is more supportive, behind the scenes." That night, I called my contact at Blackstone and asked them to put their Morgan Technologies acquisition on hold for 6 months. Then I began making calls to other private equity firms I'd worked with over the years. By morning, I had preliminary agreements from 3 different investment groups to back a management buyout of Morgan Technologies, with me as the acquiring entity. The strategy was elegant in its simplicity. Morgan Technologies was privately held by aging founder William Morgan, who'd been looking for an exit strategy for 2 years. The company was valued at approximately $340 million. But my analysis showed it was significantly undervalued due to Morgan's conservative accounting and hidden technology assets worth at least $150 million more. Using my consulting relationships, I'd identified that Morgan Technologies owned patents on data compression algorithms that major tech companies desperately needed for their cloud services expansion. Marcus and the current leadership team had no idea these patents existed because they were buried in subsidiary companies from acquisitions made 15 years earlier. I spent the next year quietly building my position. Through my consulting firm, I helped 3 of Morgan Technologies' competitors improve their operations, getting paid $400,000 in fees while gathering intelligence about the industry landscape. I identified which companies would pay premium prices for Morgan Technologies' hidden assets and began structuring deals that would unlock that value immediately post-acquisition. The financial engineering required was complex but manageable. I leveraged my consulting firm's assets and cash flow to secure $85 million in acquisition financing from Meridian Capital, a private equity firm I'd helped with 4 previous deals. Blackstone provided another $120 million in exchange for a minority stake in the combined entity. The remaining $135 million came from a consortium of technology companies who wanted guaranteed access to those hidden patents. What made this particularly satisfying was that Marcus unknowingly helped me gather competitive intelligence. During family dinners, he'd brag about Morgan Technologies' upcoming initiatives, confidential client negotiations, and internal strategic planning. Every casual boast gave me insights I used to refine my acquisition strategy and identify additional value creation opportunities. 6 months before the acquisition announcement, I retained Harrison & Associates, the premier corporate law firm in the city, paying them $150,000 to structure the deal and handle regulatory approvals. Managing partner David Harrison personally oversaw the transaction, impressed by the strategic sophistication and financing structure we'd developed. "This is one of the most elegant leveraged buyouts I've seen in a decade," Harrison told me during our final planning meeting. "You've identified value that the current ownership doesn't even know exists, secured financing at favorable terms, and structured the deal to minimize regulatory scrutiny. Your brother's team won't know what hit them." 3 months before the announcement, I hired Jennifer Torres, a former Morgan Technologies employee who'd been driven out after Marcus took credit for her innovative client management system. Jennifer joined Mitchell Strategic Consulting as Director of Technology Integration, bringing insider knowledge of Morgan Technologies' operations and confirmation of Marcus's pattern of stealing subordinates' work. Marcus has been passing off other people's innovations as his own strategic initiatives for years, Jennifer explained during her first week. The Harrison account expansion that earned him his latest promotion? That was entirely my strategy, developed while I was on maternity leave. He presented it as his own work and got a $25,000 bonus, while I received a performance review questioning my commitment to the company. Jennifer's insider knowledge proved invaluable. She identified key employees who were frustrated with Marcus's leadership style and documented instances where his strategic decisions had actually cost the company money. More importantly, she confirmed that Morgan Technologies' current valuation was based on incomplete asset assessments that ignored the patent portfolio's true worth. The week before the announcement, I finalized my strategy for Marcus's future role. After reviewing his performance records and interviewing employees who'd worked under him, I determined that he'd consistently failed in situations requiring actual strategic thinking rather than relationship management. His success came from taking credit for others' work, not from genuine business acumen. I created a position for him in our Minneapolis office, overseeing regional sales for products he'd never had to actually understand or sell independently. The role paid $95,000 annually, with performance bonuses based on measurable results rather than relationship building. It was a fair salary that eliminated his ability to coast on charm, while requiring him to demonstrate actual business competence. Now, standing at that podium watching Marcus realize his world had fundamentally changed, I felt the deep satisfaction of a strategy executed perfectly. Miranda Walsh, who'd been negotiating secretly with me for 8 months, stepped aside with genuine respect in her eyes. She understood exactly why this moment had been orchestrated so precisely. "Before we continue," I said, my voice carrying the authority that comes from owning 51% of a multi-hundred-million-dollar company, "I believe congratulations are in order. Marcus, would you join me up here?" The boardroom fell silent as Marcus stood frozen beside his chair. Our parents sat motionless in the front row, Mother's designer purse clutched so tightly her knuckles had gone white. Dad's carefully maintained golf tan suddenly looked pallid under the conference room lighting. "Marcus," I repeated, letting corporate authority fill my voice in a way our family had never heard before. "Please." He moved toward the podium like a man walking to his execution, each step clearly visible to the assembled employees, board members, and guests. The whispers started as people connected our shared last name and began understanding the family dynamics playing out before them. "I want everyone to know that Marcus was indeed going to be promoted today," I continued, watching his face cycle through confusion and desperate hope. "That announcement will proceed, though with some necessary adjustments based on my review of company performance and strategic priorities." I opened my briefcase and removed a folder thick with documentation I'd been gathering for months. Over the past year, I've conducted comprehensive due diligence on Morgan Technology's operations, including detailed analysis of individual performance records and strategic decision-making patterns. Marcus's eyes tracked my movements as I held up the first document. The Harrison account proposal from last quarter, for example, the expansion strategy that earned significant praise and financial bonuses. According to company records and email documentation, this strategy was developed entirely by Jennifer Torres during her maternity leave, then presented by Marcus as his own strategic initiative. The color drained from Marcus's face as Jennifer Torres, now sitting in the audience wearing a confident smile, gave a small nod of acknowledgement. Several board members turned to look at her with obvious interest. "Or the Stevens Technology merger proposal," I continued, extracting another file. "Marcus presented this as a strategic opportunity worth $15 million in new revenue. However, during due diligence, I discovered he was aware of a $40 million pension liability that would come with the acquisition, but failed to disclose this information to the board or senior leadership." "That's completely out of context," Marcus stammered, finding his voice for the first time. "Business strategy requires making complex decisions with incomplete information. Sometimes you have to hide critical information from decision makers," I finished. "Take credit for subordinates' work, present deliberately misleading financial projections." Our father stood up suddenly, his face flushed with indignation. "This is completely inappropriate. Marcus has built his career through hard work and dedication. You can't just walk in here and start making accusations based on selective document review." The room turned to watch this family confrontation play out in corporate boardroom, but I maintained my professional composure completely. "Mr. Mitchell, these aren't accusations. These are documented patterns of behavior affecting company performance and employee morale. As the new owner, I have both the responsibility and the authority to ensure Morgan Technologies operates with the highest standards of integrity." I turned back to address the full room. "Marcus will indeed be receiving a promotion today. He's been selected to lead our new regional expansion into the Minneapolis market as Senior Regional Sales Director. This position will allow him to develop new business relationships while building on his existing client management strengths." Marcus's face went from relief to horror as the implications settled in. Minneapolis meant leaving his comfortable corporate network, his established client relationships, and his supportive family environment. It meant having to generate actual results rather than managing internal politics. The Minneapolis position comes with a base salary of $95,000, plus performance bonuses based on measurable sales targets and client satisfaction metrics, I continued. It's an excellent opportunity for Marcus to demonstrate his strategic abilities in a results-focused environment. "You can't do this," Marcus said, though his voice had lost its earlier confidence. "I have responsibilities here, established relationships. This is my life you're disrupting." "Your life changed the moment I acquired this company," I replied calmly. "The Minneapolis position starts next Monday. Moving expenses are covered, and I've arranged temporary housing while you find permanent accommodations." The meeting concluded with Miranda Walsh outlining additional organizational changes while my family sat in stunned silence. As employees filed out, many approached Jennifer Torres to congratulate her on her new role as Director of Strategic Development, a position that came with a $140,000 salary and equity participation. After the boardroom emptied, I accompanied my family to my new corner office, a spacious room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The office had been prepared over the previous 2 weeks with custom furniture and technology systems that reflected my new status as owner and CEO. "Have you completely lost your mind?" Marcus exploded once the door closed. "You can't just acquire a company to humiliate your own brother. This is insane." "I acquired this company because it was undervalued and represented an excellent investment opportunity," I replied, settling behind my new desk. "Your employment situation is simply one aspect of optimizing organizational performance." "Where did you even get this kind of money?" Dad demanded. "Morgan Technologies is worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Your consulting business can't generate that kind of capital." I opened my laptop and pulled up a PowerPoint presentation I'd prepared specifically for this conversation. "Mitchell Strategic Consulting has advised on transactions worth $2 billion over the past 5 years, generating $3 million in total fees. More importantly, these relationships provided access to private equity financing and strategic partnerships that made this acquisition possible." The first slide showed my consulting firm's client list: Blackstone Capital, Meridian Investments, Harrison & Associates, plus 15 major technology companies. The second slide outlined the financing structure that had made the Morgan Technologies acquisition possible. "You've been living in that tiny apartment," Mother protested, "driving that old Honda, shopping at discount stores. If you had this kind of money, why were you living like a graduate student?" "Kiddies?" "Because I was investing every available dollar into building something bigger than any of you could imagine," I replied. "While Marcus was spending $8,000 annually on designer suits and country club memberships, I was reinvesting my earnings into creating the financial foundation for strategic acquisitions." I clicked to the next slide, showing Mitchell Strategic Consulting's projected growth over the next 3 years. With Morgan Technologies as an operational base, we were positioned to become one of the region's dominant technology acquisition and development firms. Now, let's discuss the practical aspects of Marcus's transition to Minneapolis, I said, returning to immediate concerns. The position includes comprehensive health benefits, a professional development budget, and performance incentives that could increase his compensation significantly if he meets his targets. "Minneapolis?" Marcus repeated weakly. "In winter? Do you have any idea how cold it gets there?" "I hear department stores sell excellent coats," I replied with a slight smile. "You might want to expand your shopping beyond designer boutiques." The conversation continued for another hour, with my parents oscillating between outrage and desperate attempts to negotiate better terms for Marcus. But the papers had been signed, the financing was in place, and Morgan Technologies was now my company to operate as I saw fit. As they prepared to leave, Dad made one final attempt at intimidation. "The board won't stand for this kind of family vindictiveness. They'll vote you out once they understand what really happened here." The board approved this acquisition unanimously after seeing the strategic plan and financial projections, I replied. "They're more interested in increasing company value than protecting Marcus's feelings." After they left, I walked to my office windows and looked out over the city where I'd built my consulting practice from nothing into a multi-million-dollar strategic powerhouse. The simple gray blazer I'd worn to the announcement was still hanging on my office door, a reminder of how I deliberately appeared unremarkable while positioning myself for this moment. My assistant buzzed in. "Dr. Mitchell, you have a call from Harrison & Associates. They want to discuss the patent monetization strategy we developed." "Transfer it through," I said, settling back at my desk. The next phase was already beginning. Those hidden patents Marcus and his team had never known existed were about to generate $80 million in licensing revenue over the next 18 months. 3 months later, I sat in my office reviewing quarterly reports when my assistant notified me that my parents had arrived unexpectedly. Marcus had been struggling in Minneapolis, posting sales numbers 40% below target, while requesting transfers back to a more suitable market. They entered looking considerably different than they had 3 months earlier. Dad's expensive suits had been replaced with off-the-rack alternatives, and Mother's designer accessories were notably absent. Their country club memberships had been quietly terminated, and they'd been avoiding social events where people might ask about Marcus's sudden career change. "Rachel, we need to discuss Marcus's situation," Mother began without preamble. "He's struggling in Minneapolis. The clients there don't appreciate his relationship-building approach. The performance reports indicate he's having difficulty generating actual results when he can't rely on established relationships." I agreed. The regional director notes that clients in that market expect detailed product knowledge and measurable value propositions rather than social connections. "Couldn't you find him something more suitable?" Dad asked. "Maybe a position here in the corporate office, or at least somewhere with a better climate." I leaned back in my chair, studying their faces. "Has Marcus explained why his numbers are consistently below target?" They exchanged uncomfortable glances before Dad cleared his throat. "He says the market there is more demanding. The clients expect different kinds of presentations." "They expect competence," I said simply. "They want sales representatives who understand the products they're selling and can demonstrate measurable value. Marcus has spent his career relying on charm and relationship management instead of developing actual business expertise." Mother's voice took on a pleading tone. "But surely there's something you could do. He's your brother." "He's an underperforming employee who needs to develop real skills or find alternative employment," I replied. The Minneapolis position was designed specifically to help him build competencies he's never had to demonstrate before. The conversation revealed what I'd suspected. Marcus's struggles in Minneapolis were forcing my parents to confront the uncomfortable reality that their golden child had succeeded through manipulation rather than merit. His reduced income and geographic isolation had eliminated his ability to maintain the lifestyle and social status they'd all come to expect. More significantly, I discovered through Jennifer Torres's ongoing analysis of company records that Marcus had been receiving regular financial support from our parents for years. Large transfers from their accounts to his, money that had come from mortgaging their house twice to fund his expensive lifestyle and failed investment schemes. "Which brings me to something I've been meaning to discuss with both of you," I said, opening a manila envelope I'd prepared for this conversation. While reviewing Marcus's financial records for tax and compliance purposes, I discovered some interesting patterns. Their faces went pale as I spread documents across my desk. Bank statements, wire transfer records, mortgage applications, and investment account summaries painted a clear picture of systematic financial mismanagement. "Over the past 5 years, you've transferred approximately $380,000 to Marcus from your retirement accounts and home equity," I continued. "Money that was supposed to be invested in legitimate business opportunities, but was actually used to fund high-risk trading, failed startup investments, and personal expenses he couldn't cover on his salary." Mother's hand flew to her throat while Dad stared at the documents with obvious recognition. The evidence was comprehensive and undeniable. "The second mortgage on your house comes due next month," I said quietly. "The payment is $4,800, and according to these bank statements, you don't have adequate reserves to cover it." Dad's shoulders slumped in defeat. "We were hoping you might be willing to help bridge the gap until we can restructure." "You were hoping I would bail you out the same way you bailed out Marcus, over and over while telling me I didn't understand real business," I replied, letting the irony settle between us. The silence stretched uncomfortably before Mother began crying softly. "Rachel, please. We'll lose the house." I pulled out another document from my briefcase. "I have a proposal. Morgan Technologies will purchase your house at current market value, approximately $420,000, which will clear both mortgages and provide some additional capital for retirement planning." Their eyes widened with desperate hope, but I wasn't finished. "You can continue living in the house, paying rent at 30% below market rate, which will help stabilize your monthly expenses. However, there are specific terms that must be agreed to in writing." I placed a contract on the desk between them. "First, you'll both attend financial management counseling to address the decision-making patterns that led to this situation. Second, you will not provide any additional financial support to Marcus unless he completes a certified financial literacy program and demonstrates 6 consecutive months of meeting his performance targets." Dad started to protest, but I held up my hand. "Third, you will acknowledge in writing how your treatment of me over the years was inappropriate and commit to treating both your children with equal respect going forward." "That's blackmail," Dad said weakly, though his voice lacked conviction. "That's accountability," I corrected, "something this family has desperately needed for decades." I stood and walked to the window overlooking the city. "For 20 years, you dismissed my achievements while pouring resources into supporting Marcus's destructive behavior patterns. You told me I didn't understand real business while enabling someone who stole credit from subordinates and hid critical information from decision makers." Turning back to face them, I continued. "This isn't about revenge. It's about establishing healthy boundaries and ensuring that everyone in this family faces consequences for their choices." The contract sat on my desk for several long minutes while they wrestled with the decision. Finally, Dad reached for the pen with trembling hands. As they signed each page, my phone buzzed with an update from Minneapolis. Marcus had finally admitted to his regional director that he was struggling and requested training assistance. I'd already arranged for him to work with a business coaching firm that specialized in helping executives develop genuine competencies rather than relying on superficial relationship management. When my parents finished signing, something had fundamentally changed in the room. For the first time in my adult life, they were looking at me with genuine respect rather than condescending tolerance. "The driver will take you home," I said, pressing a button to summon the company car. "The financial counselor will contact you tomorrow to schedule your first session." As they stood to leave, Mother paused at the door. "Rachel, we're sorry for everything." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak immediately. After they left, I sank back into my chair and let out a long breath that seemed to carry decades of frustration and hurt. Jennifer Torres knocked and entered with fresh, quarterly reports. "The Minneapolis regional director says Marcus is showing improvement since he started the coaching program. His numbers are still below target, but his approach is becoming more professional and substantive." "Good," I replied, reviewing the performance metrics. "Real growth requires acknowledging weaknesses and developing new capabilities. It's uncomfortable, but it's the only way to build genuine competence." The board meeting started 10 minutes later, where we discussed Morgan Technologies' expansion into 3 new market verticals, using the patent licensing revenue I'd unlocked. The company was not only stable, but growing rapidly, creating opportunities for employees like Jennifer who had real talent but had never been properly recognized. As I walked into the boardroom, I caught my reflection in the polished conference table. The simple gray blazer was long gone, replaced by professional attire that reflected my actual position and capabilities. Not flashy or designer, but perfectly suited to someone who had built success through strategic thinking and systematic execution. The board members rose as I entered, a sign of respect I'd earned through competence rather than inherited through family connections. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, "let's discuss our expansion strategy for the next quarter. We have significant opportunities ahead of us." Because that's what real success looks like. Not proving others wrong, but building something meaningful that creates value for everyone involved. Marcus was learning that lesson in Minneapolis. My parents were learning it through their financial counseling, and I was implementing it every day as CEO of a company that now operated on merit rather than manipulation. The acquisition of Morgan Technologies had been just the beginning. The real victory was watching a dysfunctional family system finally confront its unhealthy patterns and start building something healthier for everyone involved, even if it took a corporate takeover to make it happen.